he opened his mouth unto blasphemies against God to blaspheme his name in his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. And all that dwell upon the earth adored him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, which was slain from the beginning of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that shall lead into captivity shall go into captivity. He that shall kill by the sword must be killed by the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints.
Welcome to Analog Catholic, everyone. My name is Rob. I'm
My
joined
name's,
as always.
oh, sorry,
I'm joined as always by
Ben.
Hey. Um, Today's episode is about a book. It's a review. We're doing our first review episode. We've sort of mm, accidentally turned the blog part of our Analog Catholic brand into movie reviews. Um, so we're gonna we're gonna do a podcast review of a book that we both read. And what's the name of the book, Ben? And who's the author?
Oh, crap. The name of the book is Lord of the World, and it is by Robert Hugh Benson.
Great name. We both really enjoyed this book. We also both, actually, how did this go? No, you read it, and I had like coincidentally ordered it, and then I decided to read it because you liked it so much. So I like it was on my like backlog, but then you liked it so much, and I had just ordered it. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read it now. I'm gonna put it to the top of my pile and read it. Um, we're gonna go into the review. This is gonna be a spoiler heavy review. So if you don't want to be spoiled, just stop listening and then read the book and then come back and listen to this podcast because we still want that view. We still want that listen
Can we
on
can
our.
we start with, can you give like a quick like why you should read the book for those that haven't
Okay,
and
that's
then
good.
wanna,
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'll do that.
yeah.
I really recommend the book because, well, I'll give the synopsis of the book. Synopsis is the synopsis. It doesn't spoil anything. Basically, it's a dystopian novel. It takes place like honestly, roughly around present day, but it's was written 100 years ago. So there's a lot of like differences in the present day because 100 years ago, what they thought this would look like is just different. Um, Basically, religion has become not taboo, but borderline outlawed, and the only real faith left that's practiced is Catholicism. Um, and the story follows the perspective of a priest and of a high level um, secular government official. And they're two clashing viewpoints on the state of the world as it is at that point in time. Um, there's a mysterious figure who's rising to prominence very quickly. Um, and it's never stated, but heavily implied that this figure is in the vein of the Antichrist. And so the plot is really just that. I mean, that's kind of the synopsis I give you there. Is this priest's perspective on this changing world and what looks like this growing onslaught of persecution against the faithful, while the rising secular religious fervor of the atheists, the humanists, um, in this. And so I think it's worth reading because I think it touches on probably what it's going to really look like in the future. We'll go into more later, but I think it gives a really good glimpse psychologically into what's happening um, in the world. Like, again, this was written 100 years ago, so it was something that Robert Hugh Benson, he was an Anglican priest who converted to Catholicism, maybe a Jesuit, who saw kind of the writing on the wall. Um, and I wouldn't say his predictions have come true, right? But the trends have certainly matched, I think, his predictions. Um, yeah, so it's just an overview of a dystopian and apocalyptic novel um, from the perspective of a Catholic priest, and one of the secular um, government officials of this new world order, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good. I think it's I mean again, it's like a dystopian novel, but it feels like the Catholic version of 1984. There's just this sense of like here's how he thinks the world is going to spiral, or he thinks the world could spiral,
Yeah,
um, like into this terrible darkness. But from the perspective of somebody that has a strong faith in Christ and his church, and sort of how those things will
yeah,
play out. So go read it if you haven't read it. If you don't mind spoilers, we're going to talk about it. Or if you have read it, we're going to talk about it. So you can stick around.
yeah. All right, so let's just kind of dive in. Off the cuff, my my thought, other than like just saying like, oh, it's good again, is I think it's one of the books that when you read it, it's not so much the story you're reading, right? Like I didn't read this and think, wow, this is a literary masterpiece. It's not written poorly, but it's like, oh, it's so good because of the writing, or it's so good because of this, that, and I think it's like it's good because it's true. I think it's very honest, and it's very much rather than write, a long-winded essay. Robert Hugh Benson said, I'm gonna write a story, and the story and the characters, they're gonna explain what's on my heart and mind. They're gonna explain what I'm feeling. And I think that has merit. It doesn't always land, but I think it lands with this. Um, and that made it enjoyable for me. I wanted to keep reading. Because I just wanted to see where he was going with all of this, and I wanted to see his portrayal of not just the Antichrist, but his portrayal of like how does the faithful survive this constant barrage, psychological, sociological, and even physical martyrdom they experience from the secular world and the secular people. And there's a scene um, towards the beginning. I'm kind of hopping around here, but there's a scene towards the beginning where what's his name, Oliver, right? Oliver Brand, the secular government official that you follow his perspective on. He's giving a speech, and he's nearly assassinated by a Catholic, and the crowds like literally tear the Catholic apart. It's not described like gruesome detail, but it's like talked about what happened. Um, and it's just like this violent hatred for Catholicism in the Catholics, and they're merely tolerated at this point in the story. Like no one likes them. Everyone thinks they're weird and cult-like, but they're tolerated. But if I remember correctly, there was a whole deal like the Pope made like prior to the start of this book. The Pope makes a deal with the world governments where he basically like gives away all, if not most, of the churches and secludes himself in Rome. And so there's a few countries, or like that, like the country of Italy, like he gave all the churches in Italy to the Italian government to use whatever they want to. And he gets Rome, and the Italian government moves to Turin. I think France was something similar. In England, there's like a point made that only Catholicism survived, like not Anglicanism or anything like that. And like basically all the churches are gone. I think St. Paul's Cathedral, which is supposed to be like the crown jewel, is a train station now. Like they just do this. No, St. Paul's the train station, or St. Paul where they do the secular mass. I don't know, but I can't remember. It's been a while now since I read. We kind of delayed doing this review. Yeah, but it's just this like presentation, like this story starts with this presentation of Catholicism as this like weird culty thing that like the majority of the world rejects and just says like you people are nuts, you're stupid, you're crazy, like God's not real. How could you not understand that man is perfect? And that's I think one of the big themes that's touched on is this idea that the people of the world, quote unquote, come to realize that man is perfect and that man is God. And they start literally worshiping humanity, or they worship, themselves. To put it in perspective, so that theme right there is one of the core themes. Where like, yes, this is happening. It's not as dramatic as it happened in the story, where there's like literal religious rites they start invoking towards the end. But the idea of God has been rejected for man and man is now God, I think that's just like, yes, he predicted that perfectly. I mean, you could probably say he was, observable 100 years ago, and it probably was, but it's just even more so true to the culture, true to the fact. So that was one of the themes that I really liked and enjoyed throughout the book that I said, yep, this is absolutely a sign of the rejection of God, right? Is the elevation of man as God, as the pinnacle of creation. Um, yeah. What do you got, Ben?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think what strikes me is like the inversion, like the way it's done.
Hmm.
I'm trying to see if I can find it. I'm not going to be able to, but like there's when Felsenberg, right? He's sort of the Antichrist figure. He paints out kind of his values. Like it sounds like a lot of them are like it sounds like he's quoting scripture, but he flips it just a little bit. So like the big one, kind of what you're like referencing, of like he says that man is God, which like we say that God is man, right? Like God comes down in the person of Christ and becomes man. So it's like it's the same words, but it's just kind of inverted. And there's like a similar thing about like yeah, like he does a few things like that where he like it's literally just verses of scripture, just like the words are mixed around, um, which is just like so interesting. Yeah, and it feels very providential. Also, like one of the things right at the beginning of the book is sort of this euthanasia bit where they have this person's dying and like the priest runs up to him, which was like some big scandal because that like usually didn't happen, but then they like put him down, right, essentially, so
Yeah.
he doesn't have to suffer, and
Hmm.
it's just like that's accepted as normal, um, which like it feels like we're close to that, right? Like euthanasia is kind of making this appearance in our society, and I'm sure like it will only grow. At least that's what it seems like.
Hmm.
Um, as like an elective thing, right? Like people are suffering. Yeah, which is just like a frightening thought to like discard of human life in that way.
Hmm.
I also think again, right at the beginning, I think when the mother's first introduced, or maybe like their second introduction, like the way that um, like the son feels sorry for the mother
Hmm.
to like have grown up in like a society that was at least somewhat tolerant of Christianity. And it's not even like he's mad at, like, I mean, there's like some maybe unhappiness with it, but it's like he feels like she's just such a fool and that like, um, yeah, it's just like this weird like way of reacting, which I think like we're seeing nowadays more like a lot of secular people will kind of look at Christians as like just idiots. And like a quote unquote evolved secular person will look at them and
Hmm.
like feel sorry that they've been fooled. Um, yeah. So like those are like yeah, again, very like good predictions of today. I also thought it was funny, and like I think he kind of stepped away from this more as the book went on. But like right at the beginning, there's the flying saucer machine, and then there's like when they're eating dinner, like he describes this conveyor belt that delivers the meal. And it's just like he really goes into depth to describe these technologies.
Yes.
And like he like at the same time, like I don't like it's just like he makes it confusing too. Um, but it's just like funny how how much he put into it. Yeah.
I like yeah, like because one of the big technologies that he really harps on is he calls them velours, which are I think the description wasn't like the clearest to me. I think they're like zeppelins almost, like blimp, but like they're built like trains that basically float through the sky. That's how it's just like in my mind. That's how I viewed it. It's essentially like flying trains. Because this book was written 1912, so flight had occurred, but like casual travel of planes wasn't really a thing yet. 1907. Yeah, 1907. So the novel came out post-flight, right? But not when flying was a wide scale thing. So in his mind, it's like flight's achievable. How do we do that? Well, blimps and balloons are like they exist at this point in time. So that's sort of like the mode of travel, like international travel in particular, is like through these flying ships. And he like they are frequently brought up, and a lot of plot points actually kind of revolve around them. So like we see the perspective of a non-Catholic witnessing Catholic last rites when, like you're saying, like the Valor accident occurs, and Father Percy, who's the protagonist, is like giving last rites to a Catholic who was like injured in this accident before the euthanasia team comes and euthanizes them. Um, when we find out that the Vatican's about to be destroyed, big spoiler there. We find out the Vatican's about to be destroyed. Like it's Father Percy, well then Cardinal Percy is like on a velour back to England, and they like basically get sideswiped by another oncoming one because they're like rushing as fast as possible to go bomb Rome and the Vatican. Um, so like this technology is mentioned, and it's also used as a vehicle to tell us like how the world views the church in itself, but then also how the church is being viewed in the world at that time. So I think that use of the technology with it is one of the funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but just like one of the I don't know cooler approaches I think to telling the story. Like again, it's not like he wrote these like this beautiful literary prose. He was just telling us basically his thoughts of the future. And so it's yeah, sometimes I felt like he was just excited to show us his ideas for future technology, like living underground and having these soft green lights or these flying vehicles or um the like conveyor belt for food and like the table goes below the floor and is like stocked up in the kitchen by your servants and then like raises up through the floor again. And it's just like this very like yeah, I guess those things are cool. Um, but it's just like yeah, the focus was much more on he wanted to like kind of present the future as opposed to like write the next great novel. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I need the glass of water there.
Yeah, I so apparently there's another it's not a sequel, but the Benson wrote a second book.
Yep.
I'm blanking on what it's called. Let's see if I can find it. But it's sort of the same story, like the story of kind of the end of the world, but from like a happy perspective, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, because people were like, "That's depressing," and so
Yeah.
he wrote another one. So I haven't read it. Maybe we'll have to come back and do it. But I do think like
Yeah.
how, yeah, like intense and like depressing, but also like beautiful. Like I think the ending is incredible.
I
Um,
loved the ending. I
I
get
thought it
why
was
people
just
find
so
it
awesome.
depressing, but I was like, this is the best way to end this book. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, like some better version or like a happier version, I guess. But
yeah,
yeah, let's. What do you love about the ending?
so much. I think to get to the ending, I'll like speak on the point you're saying. The book is actually just depressing. There's no going up in the book. Everything gets worse as the book goes on. But it's funny because the secular perspective is that the world's getting better. So from our perspective as the reader, one seeing it through the eyes of Father Percy, but also like I mean, you and I are practicing Catholics, so obviously we're going to view this book probably differently than a non-practicing Catholic or a non-Catholic. But to us, the world's getting worse. Everything's getting worse. From the eyes of those in the secular world in this book, it's getting better. They're free of the shackles and superstition of religion. They are now able to fully embrace like the goodness of humanity and all the things that come from it and peace. That's a big thing. They were like, oh, there's been so much death and destruction and hurt in this world because of religion. Like, no religion means peace. Peace is here. And it's all through a very hypocritical lens because as they keep like extolling this and saying peace, 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 the Antichrist is saying like, actually, we need to start persecuting the Catholics. Actually, we need to kill the Catholics. Actually, we need to bomb Rome. Actually, we need to like kill the last remaining hierarchy of the church that we have. And this hypocrisy is a struggle Oliver Brand's wife deals with, where she keeps saying, I was promised peace. I was promised peace. And yet all I'm seeing is violence and like this horrible violence being sent to these Catholics. And her choice in the end is literally to just kill herself. She goes to, the euthanasia clinic and she goes through the process and she like she dies. She gets euthanized at the end. She kills herself because she can't handle literally the hypocrisy she's experiencing from this. This like, you keep saying that humans are like there's peace has been achieved, and yet you're just still killing. You're still killing. So the end of the book, so like three-quarters of the way through the book, Rome gets obliterated. There was a conspiracy in England to do this massive assassination against the Antichrist and a couple other politicians. It gets uncovered. The protagonist was on his way back to England to stop them from doing this because he knew that the reaction from the world would be violence against the Catholics, and he was right. Plot gets uncovered, and immediately the government of like Germany and France and England, I think it's those three, sends, or maybe it's just Germany and England. They just send basically bombers to destroy the entirety of Rome. So the entire Vatican's destroyed, the Pope's killed, all of the cardinals except for two are killed, and then all of the like princes. That's another distinction thing that I thought was interesting. The kings and princes of Europe have been exiled. The monarchies have been exiled because they were seen as being too religious and also too like of the old ways. And so in their exile, they were in Rome. So they also all died in this, which I think was Robert Hugh Benson's way of saying monarchy is good in the way of the life that we should have. And this rejection of monarchy, which was becoming stronger at the turn of the 20th century, like is also bad. Um, so they're all dead. And Percy becomes the new pope because there's only two cardinals left, and he's one of them. So he becomes the new pope, and he retreats to the Middle East, to the Holy Lands, where he creates new cardinals from the remaining priests and tries to do his best to keep the faithful faithful. Um, but they get discovered because they were kind of in hiding. They get discovered, and once more the Antichrist says, "Okay, this is it. We need to kill them all once and for good." And he has a synod going on essentially. He has all the cardinals of the world there with him, and I think they know it's happening. At one point, he says, "I am not like guessing or like assuming. Like the Lord has told me explicitly." So at one point, he basically says, "The Lord has told me what's about to happen." Um, and so they go into mass. They have mass, and then they go into adoration. And while they're singing the Pange Lingua, I think it is. Yeah, well, particularly Tantum Ergo. Um, it just sort of, uh, yeah, it leaves you with the sense that they all died in the bombing. But I think what's happening is the apocalypse is happening. I think that's so. I kind of want your thoughts on this. In my mind, I read this and I said, "Oh, as the last of the church is being destroyed, Christ has come." Now, that's not explicitly written. Like there is no like, "Oh, Christ is here now," and like we see Christ in his coming, second coming. But that's how I left this book. That was like because literally the ending of the book is the Tantum Ergo. And it says, Then this world passed and the glory of it. That told me the second coming had occurred, which
Yeah,
to me
that
is glorious. Like that's
right.
good. So, but I get that like if that's not your mindset, it's super dark. Because then it's just like, oh, they all died in like I think now we'd say nuclear hellfire. Nukes didn't exist in 1907, but the implication of the bombs is they're like the greatest, worst bombs ever made. Which in 1907, who knows what that looks like, but in our mind, we'll say like that's nukes. So essentially, like that's how it ends. The church is down to this core. Literally, it's the Pope and like 11 other cardinals because one of them turned out to be a traitor, Judas, and they just get bombed. They're just like killed. But it says the world has passed in the coming of the glory. So I think literally the second coming of Christ occurs at the end of the novel.
Yeah, I think that that's how I interpreted it, and I like this line. Um, it's the first chapter of this, or it's the second section of the end of the first section of the last chapter. He says, "This is the Pope. I have a vision. I have had a vision of God." Um, he said softly, "I walk no more by faith, but by sight."
Yeah,
So just this thought of like he has seen God and he has been told like he can see what's going to happen. He no longer has to like walk by faith because like God has revealed himself. And yeah,
yeah,
I love like ending with the Tantu Mergo and then the like the translation of the last line is this world past and the glory of it.
yeah,
Yeah, and I interpreted that as yes, the world ended with the destruction of the church. Um, yeah,
yeah,
it's just awesome. It's like an awesome parallel. And yeah,
yeah.
like
It's good,
it's
but
great.
I get that it's like gloomy because yeah, the story there's no wins. There's no the Catholic Church doesn't win in this
Right,
story. Like the good guys don't win in this story. So it's just very depressing. It's very dystopian, but it ends with the second coming of Christ, and you're just like, oh, that actually is the ultimate victory.
right,
And it reminds me of Chesterton. I think it's Chesterton's quote, where he's like, I'm a Catholic, so I expect this life to be full of many defeats, but knowing that in the end, like there's victory. I know I kind of like
right,
paraphrase that a little bit, but like that was his whole thing. Is like, yeah, I'm not expecting to win all the time. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting to lose all the time, but
right.
I know in the end, victory is still there. And so that's how I took this like this book was ultimately like, yeah, honestly, the world's gonna get worse. You're gonna look like you're losing, but in the end, you win.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah. And it's like this inversion. I mean, this is like not a modern problem of like the elimination of suffering as like something that's good. And it's like Christ makes it pretty clear that like suffering is a like a road to salvation.
yeah,
Um, but like the world constantly wants to eliminate suffering. And like that's what you see here is like the ultimate suffering happens of the church, to the church at the end of time.
yeah.
But like it is through that that salvation comes. I found this section that I was referencing earlier about this inversion. I think Felsenbird's speaking.
He speaks. So this is a quick thing. He only has one sentence of dialogue in the whole
Okay,
book.
this must not be him. This is somebody kind of describing,
Yeah,
yeah, his interaction, or like describing his worldview. This is at
yeah.
the end of chapter one of book two.
Okay,
It's a long section, but I think it's worth hearing here.
yeah,
Um, but what has been done is as follows: the Eastern peril has been forever dissipated. It is
yeah,
understood now by fanatic barbarians as well as by civilized nations that the reign of war is ended. Not peace, but a sword, said Christ, and
mhm,
bitterly true have those words proved to be. Not a sword, but peace is the retort. Articulate at last for those who have renounced Christ's claims or have never accepted them. So right there, like it's that flip, right? Like not
yeah,
peace, but a sword. Like Christ said he was going to bring a sword, not peace, but they flip it, right? And it's like, well, everybody wants peace. Like God wants
yeah,
peace, but it's like this kind of like little like we have brought peace by the sword, but we're like it's peace now, so like get over it. And then he keeps going. The principle of love and union, learned, however, falteringly in the West during the last century, has been taken up in the East as well. There shall be no more an appeal to arms, but to justice, no longer a crying after a God who hides himself, but to man who has learned his own divinity. So again, like the flip of like man is God, not God is man, but
yeah,
also like this moment of like we don't need God, like we've figured it out, right? Like we are God. The supernatural is dead. Rather, we know now that it has never been alive. What remains is to work out this new lesson to bring every action, word, and thought to the bar of love and justice. And
mhm,
this will be, no doubt, the task of years. Every code must be reversed, right? So he like says what's happening. Every barrier thrown down. Party must unite with party, country with country, and continent with continent. There's no longer the fear of fear, the dread of the hereafter, or the paralysis of strife. So again, like no suffering. Man has grown long enough in the travails of birth, his blood has been poured out like water through his own foolishness, but at length he understands himself and is at peace. Um,
Mm,
so, like, again, the promise of love and justice, and this promise of like ultimate like world peace, but it's all fake, right? Because the
hmm
cost of all of that is removing strife, removing like the division that truth requires, right? Like to have truth,
Yeah.
we have to have falsehood as well, right? Like we have to admit that there is such a thing as falsehood if there is truth. But it's just so, like this wordplay is just so it's freaky almost. Just how like
Yeah.
it's like all the right buzzwords, right? Like, but it's all the wrong things.
Yes. Yeah, it's clearly something that was on Robert Hugh Benson's mind as the Antichrist is literally going to be the Antichrist. He's going to invert the truth. He's going to invert the words. And yeah, it's just it was so good. Like I said, I didn't want to put it down. It was such a good, engaging novel. But I wanted to say the only thing. Oh, did I just lose it? Oh no. The only thing the Antichrist actually says in the book is after his secretaries proposed the idea to his cabinet of bombing and killing the last of the Catholics, he goes, "Is there any other proposal?" Right? So then, in a breathless hush, he spoke for the first time in his strange voice, now as passionless as a frozen river. "Is there any other proposal?" That's all he says. Everything else in the book is people describing what he said, or it's the secondary character Oliver Brand who we follow. He's a speechwriter, so he's writing things. So we'll usually like get an idea of what's being said or done through him. And I just thought it was so interesting that like this is literally there's maybe like 10 pages left in the book. We finally hear the actual words, and all it is a reference to him basically asking them, "Is there any other proposal besides killing everyone else?" And they all say, "Nope, that's the way to do it." And I think that's like super. I don't know. I just think it's so interesting to make that be his thing. And it mentions that his strange voice, now as passionless as a frozen river, one of the things that's highlighted throughout the entire novel is is the charismatic ability to speak and how everyone's enthralled by him and they're literally just like overcome by his mere presence. But in this instance, he has none of that. It's just to the point, cold, calculated, you know, asking for their assent to do this. Uh, I just thought that was like such an interesting portrayal that we finally get to meet him in person and we finally get to hear what he has to say. And that's all it is. It's just that instance of him getting the assent to kill a bunch of people. Because like at the end of the day, that's who he is. He's not that charismatic peace bringer. He's just someone looking to kill the faithful and to persecute the faithful. Um, so that was a huge thing for me.
Yeah. And it's like simple, right? Like it's
Hmm
he does only what he must in order to make the things happen.
hmm
Which is yeah, like how the devil works, right? Like he pushes the right things into place, but is like best served by this sense of like he's not there, right? This anonymity or
Yeah,
like hiddenness. But yeah, yeah, and it is like a a freaky thing. But yeah, and it feels like the book again, like obviously it's depressing and it's not 100% describing what's happening right now, but like you
yeah,
see that the sort of cracks of it, like the things that um, do seem very relevant to what we're experiencing today. And again, that like that flipping of words and phrases and like using Christ's words like against him, right? Like we see
yeah,
that today too, of like apparently everybody's Christian, even though everybody disagrees, right? Like, um, and it's just yeah, it's freaky. It's
yeah,
freaky.
yeah,
And it's so easy to fall into it. And like I think this piece here is like right, like it like nobody's Christian anymore. And so now we can like talk openly about the fact that Christ was wrong about everything, right? But
hmm
like now we're kind of a few steps behind that. But like this makes sense, right? Like if it progresses in a way that like nobody's truly Christian, then it's like, okay, now we're evolved as a society and we can openly deny Christ and like explain how he was wrong
yep,
about things. But the fact that like his identity still haunts the society, even if the society exists without him. Um, Kind of makes you think like they needed him all along to do something.
Yeah. I like they just describe it too. Like his existence like haunts them, even if they are doing everything they possibly can to reject him and root him out
Right.
of the world. And it's just like an inescapable reality, which I think is like kind of what Harvey Benson is trying to portray here is you can't run away from God. You can't escape God. Um, so I think that's a big thing. And it's a huge apocalyptic narrative. There's a lot of apocalyptic theories, like what's the final test going to look like? What's the apocalypse going to look like? Who's the Antichrist going to look like? I think this is just one view into many of what it's going to look like. I know a lot of people nowadays are saying the test is going to be involving AI. So of course everyone's up in arms about AI. Um, but here it was just simply a cultural shift to this atheistic humanism and just the general spiritual acedia. Like they just give it up. But it touches on something Fulton Sheen says, right? Where I think it's Fulton Sheen. Maybe I'm getting wrong. Maybe it's Chesterton again, for all I know. I don't know. Anyway, basically saying like people can reject religion, but they're going to worship something. Now, C.S. Lewis. They're going to reject religion, right? But they're going to worship something. And this book kind of shows that, which is they've rejected God, they've rejected Christ, they've rejected Catholicism, but they're worshiping themselves. Because at the end of the day, there's still that innate desire to worship. And they worship they like, come up with new four major feasts, like paternity, maternity, abundance, I think, and then like something else. And we see like it's heavily based off Catholic liturgy, but it's done in like mockery, where paternity is not about God the Father, but it's about like man. And then like maternity is not about like Mary, the mother of God, but about woman. And they sort of describe these effigies they create, and they look like the effigy of the woman literally is like Mary with the seven swords, like piercing her heart and 12 stars. They're just like appropriating the truths of the Catholic faith and adapting them to their new secular humanistic atheism. Um, yeah, it's a great book. I recommend reading it. I'd be curious if there's a movie about it, or if like I'd be interested to see if someone ever does anything like that. It would definitely be a very like niche movie, but I'd be curious to see the presentations of that. Um, but yeah, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up here on this review?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's definitely a good book if you listen this far and haven't read it. And yeah, just beautiful and prophetic.
Yeah, I think even if this was spoilers for you, it's still worth reading. And there's
Right.
there's more in there that we didn't talk about. But it's an enjoyable book. As depressing as it is, it's an enjoyable book. Um, that's for sure.
All right.
Well,
I'm Ben,
I'm Rob,
and this has been
Analog Cat.